इस वक्त मैं हरमिंदर सिंह जी के घर में हूँ और मैं इस विषय पर आपसे मिलने आया कि हाल ही में अपना जो लोसल निंजे चैरिटेबल सोसाइटी परम पवन दलाई लामा जी के जो एक्साइल रूट है उसको लेकर एक बुक बना रहा है। इसके विषय में हम सब के लिए बहुत ही प्रेरणा की बात है कि हरमिंदर सिंह जी ने परम पवन दलाई लामा जी को 1959 में लुमला से लेकर तेजपुर तक उन्होंने गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के एक ऑफिसर के तौर पर कार्यरत रहे। तो ये बहुत ही सौभाग्य की बात है कि हमें उनसे मिलने का जो अवसर मिला है और साथ में कुछ कुछ जो प्रश्न हैं उस प्रश्न को पूछना और उनसे उनका जो अनुभव रहा है वो अनुभव वो हमें बताएंगे और पूरे तवांग के जितने भी लोग हैं उन सभी के लिए ये बहुत ही बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी है कि हम उनके द्वारा इस अनुभव को सुने। आपको सबसे पहले
तशीदेलेक आपको भी।
What was your first reaction on seeing His Holiness for the first time? What were the first words from your mouth and words uttered by His Holiness?
His Holiness was very tired, but he was in very good shape, and he was very happy that he had entered safe Indian territory, and he knew that there was still some distance to go to the place where there is accommodation, but he was looking very happy to set his foot on the soil, and his reactions were very normal to indicate that he has entered a safe place.
Do you remember the first word that you had uttered and His Holiness responded to you?
I don't remember, but I must have said, "Welcome, Your Holiness," and he must have said something like, "I'm glad to have come to India."
What was the response of the people of Tawang on visit of His Holiness at their respective places?
This is something that I have talked very often about. It is something that I experienced, but it's very difficult to describe. If my own God were to come suddenly to this earth and say, "Harminder Singh, I'm here," the reaction would be of the same kind. People all over, all around, people from the villages were experiencing a spiritual upsurge. Something had suddenly happened to them. Their God was amongst them, and he had come suddenly, and they just were amazed that something was happening to them. There was a very great spiritual experience, and those people who actually saw His Holiness and experienced this moment will definitely carry the memory of that moment, which will be a sacred memory for the rest of their life. I just cannot describe it as an outsider in a sense. If I experienced the upsurge of the people while they were witnessing His Holiness, how much more would be the impact on them when His Holiness was passing their route. They were bent, their eyes closed, murmuring shlokas or whatever Tibetan prayers are, and just not raising their eyes to look at him except for a moment, because even that would be probably disrespect to him.
As per the version of His Holiness had come on a horn or hornless yak. Any clarification on that?
I think that's not true. His Holiness rode on horses, on ponies.
Because some of the people, they were saying that before entering the border, he had suffered from some type of dysentery. So the moment when he wants to cross the border, he had to sit on a hornless yak.
No, that is not true. It is possible that he may have suffered from dysentery. I don't know. But if he did, his very loyal staff was with him, and they would have taken care of that illness with the Tibetan medicines.
A confusion among general people is that His Holiness had halted at Gorzam. Some say he didn't. Any clarification on that, sir?
Actually, I'll have to look at my note. He probably stopped for the night at the border and then came to Lumla, where he was mainly to stay. I'm not very sure whether he stopped at the border. I'll have to look up my notes.
If we look at the distances concerned, then some of the local people, they say that the distance itself, one night he had halted at border, the next he halted at Gorzam, then Sakti, then Lumla.
No, that is not true. But once he entered the border, and one of our officials, Mr. Murthy, met him, then after the stop there were no further stops till Lumla. There was just one stage during which he covered Lumla, border and Lumla.
Okay, sir. Tawang was a secure location by 1959. Why was he allowed to stay for only 2 days in Tawang?
Actually, the days were not determined. As far as I remember, the government wanted him to stay in Tawang for a reasonable time to rest and recuperate, but not for long, for his own safety. So Dalai Lama himself decided, because of these considerations, the period of his stay.
Which agency of security was responsible for the security of His Holiness during his travel in Tawang region?
Actually, there were IB people, Intelligence Bureau people, hanging around, but they were not really capable of providing any security. His security came mainly from the Assam Rifles troops that were traveling with him, and also a few of his own people.
Was there a halt at foothills before reaching Misamare?
Yes, actually the news of escape of His Holiness was stunning for the world. The people or the press from all over the world was very excited, and they would have reached Bomdilla, Tawang, whatever, if it was possible for them to do so. But they were prevented at the inner line. So they were all gathered beyond the inner line. I remember seeing them. In those days, the press was not so active, but they were sufficiently active. They had pictures, and they had magazines. They had other paraphernalia, and they were asking questions from His Holiness. By that time, a minister of Assam had come to join His Holiness, so he was with DL. But the press was very excited, and if you see the press cuttings of those time, which few of them I have, they are like press today, all wanting to know, without waiting for DL's answer to one person.
As per your memory, who were the members following the His Holiness from Tibet?
There were two of his tutors and 4 ministers, and there was also the commander-in-chief of the troops who happened to be His Holiness's brother-in-law. His Holiness's sister was married to the Commander-in-Chief. These were the prominent people, and the two tutors for ministers and the Commander-in-Chief, and of course Rinpoche brother.
As an administrator at that time, a chair was prepared for His Holiness by you. Can you tell us where is that chair now?
Actually, I had prepared a throne for him to sit and give blessings to people. And even when we were around, he could sit a little higher on the throne. It was intact till the Chinese invasion. I don't know what the Chinese did to that house, so the throne must have got destroyed with that.
Sir, where was the last gathering of people during his visit till you accompanied him?
I accompanied him till Tezpur. Tezpur is the place in Assam, a district, which is the district headquarters. And he stayed in the guest house, Tezpur. He selected two of his people. Actually, there was internal discussion by His Holiness with his people, and then he selected two people from his entourage to go on stage in Tezpur in a public meeting and speak to the public in Tezpur, which meant speak to the public in India and the world, because whatever he must have spoken must have been sent by radio, etc., all over the world. Why he was in Tezpur? What were the circumstances that led him to leave his kingdom and come so far? So that's where he gave his statement. The statement was given by two Tibetan officials of His Holiness. That was the last time I was with him. The government had arranged a special train in Tezpur. It had come to Tezpur to take him to Mussoorie.
From where did you accompany His Holiness?
Right from Lumda right up to Tezpur. I was with His Holiness during his stay in Bobdilla for about 7 days. It was a little problem for me how to keep His Holiness engaged, but I tried my best. And the great thing is that whatever useless things I did, His Holiness participated and did not show that he enjoyed or did not enjoy. For example, there were old Government of India films like Life of Nehru or something like that. I mean, you don't show these films to dignitaries, but there was nothing to do, so I showed him these films, keep him busy. Then there were all the government places, hospitals and I took him there, and he very kindly took interest, asked questions from the students and participated. Then I had a little club for staff. I had set it up when I was posted there in a little hut, because in hills the nights comes early and people would go to their house and light up their lanterns and would have nothing to do. So I set up this place and I told my people that they should come there and for example, I made a little book of Hindi film songs and I said that they should sing those songs. Song number 10, please sing. So they would sing and then they would bring food which they exchanged. The families bought their share of food. So everyone brought one kind of dal, somebody brought rice, somebody brought something else, and they shared it. So this way I had thought that I'd be able to relieve the boredom at night, early night of the people. So I took His Holiness also to the club twice and made these people sing, share the food and generally meet His Holiness and take his blessings.
Very interesting, it seems. Sir, what was the most touching thought or words that His Holiness had said that you still remember?
I think it's difficult to recall many things that he said. He may have said while talking to me, but it sums up in one sentence, "You are my friend."
Since 1959, His Holiness has visited Tawang region 5 times. Have you ever felt during his visit that His Holiness has come from a foreign land by way of his gestures, speeches, or he had a homely feeling at one region?
I haven't really kept in touch, but my guess is that His Holiness's visits to Tawang could not have been political. It must have been totally religious visits to the monastery.
Sir, how did you find His Holiness as a person, not as a spiritual leader?
I haven't been put this question before, but if I were to sum up His Holiness as a human being, the qualities that are prominent in him are, he is a very genuine person. He is more concerned about the person he is handling or dealing with or talking than with himself. He has no ego of any kind. He does not think that he is a great person. He is humble and like any common man, he enjoys very simple things like flower or making conversation or anything like that, like any simple person would do, like what we are doing. He's like that. He doesn't have any pretensions that he's somebody different from us.
Sir, it is believed that His Holiness didn't have meals except from his follower staff. Have you been fortunate enough to have been invited for a meal with him?
Actually, when he stayed in my house, his meals were cooked by or were helped in cooking by his tutors who probably supervised the work of cooks. But in Bomdila, my wife said that I will like to join in cooking food of His Holiness because I told my wife that it's better to keep an eye on the foods, though the tutors were keeping an eye, but I said it's still better to keep an eye on the food prepared for His Holiness so that it's a safety angle.
His Holiness was very much willing to learn English, so he used to point out what is that, and you point saying that it's a flower, then he used to laugh. Can you tell a little experience of that again?
Yes, actually, he made a lot of effort though he was going through very difficult circumstances and he had no idea about what is going to happen next. But just as is his nature, his nature is very open. In his talk also, he talks and laughs. It's very easy. Sometimes it's difficult to talk to big people, but it's very easy to talk to His Holiness because he makes the other person feel easy. So, and while talking, he often laughs. So this I remember very well, that whenever he would see, for example, he sees cauliflower, he'll say cauliflower, and like he's achieved something great, and then start laughing.
Sir, in many a times it is found that His Holiness used to refer you as the elder brother of His Holiness. And he used to say that I had a very good experience with you. How do you see the relation in that way?
I am a servant of His Holiness. I cannot claim to have that kind of high rank, but it is true that His Holiness has always treated me as a brother and friend.
You have received His Holiness as a refugee in 1959. Today he is an important international figure. How do you feel whenever you see him again?
I think if there is a jewel, you cannot keep it hidden. The entire world has met His Holiness. I had the opportunity to go to some places which His Holiness was visiting abroad because I was invited to do so. He doesn't change when he is surrounded by kings or presidents and so on. He remains the same, a very simple monk who has a lot of wisdom, and his main asset is that whenever he is amused, he laughs heartily.
Sir, can you little bit tell about yourself? When you was born and when did you join your service? Where were you posted at the beginning? And you retired, in what post you retired from the Government of Indian Service?
Okay. I was born in a train in a country called Tanganyika, now Tanzania.
In train, sir?
In train.
Yes, sir.
In Africa. My father was a police officer there, and my early childhood was spent in Africa, but we were posted to different places, and so I had to study in two different Indian languages because the populations of those places differed. Some places had Urdu-speaking population, so I studied in Urdu, and some places had Gujarati-speaking population, so I studied in Gujarati. So I grew up learning both these languages. To cut it short, we returned to India during the Second World War. My father was then in Calcutta, so I joined him there, and I witnessed the bombing by the Japanese during the Second World War. Later on, I joined the army, and after some time, I joined a new service which Pandit Nehru wanted to establish, called Indian Frontier Administrative Service, to take care of areas like Arunachal and Nagaland, which were then, particularly Arunachal, had no administration. So my friends in the Frontier Service established administration in these areas. and I was in a senior capacity when I became senior. I was fortunate to be the administrator of Bomdila district, and I had there the fortune of receiving His Holiness. Later on, I served in several capacities in Delhi, also in Sikkim, and I was the Chief Commissioner of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. My last job was Director General of Employees State Insurance Corporation, which is mainly establishing hospitals and dispensaries for labor people in India. After serving the government, I did about 10 years with the United Nations. I served again with the United Nations in the ILO in a particular job, but my headquarters was in Delhi. That was for 10 years. So I finally retired when I was 70. I am now just one short of 90 and 11 short of 100.
Sir, your date of birth, sir?
My date of birth is 10th June 1926.
Any great personality of India that had inspired your life?
I worked under Mr. Nehru, directly under Mr. Nehru in some posts, and briefly with Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri. But whatever people may say, I think Pandit Nehru did a lot for India, and Mahatma Gandhi definitely brought freedom to India by his methods, though both personalities are criticized by the critics.
For the last 1 year, my team that includes Sri Nawang Chota, Sri Dawa Norbu, Sri P.N. Thungdok, Sri Sangye Chotop, Mr. Konjo Chiring, Pasang Khandu, Thuptan Tesi. These all people have worked so hard to see that the real meaning of education comes in our Mon region. For that, they had also visited different places where His Holiness in 1959 had visited. As I told you earlier that we are also trying to promote this trek route so that the international communities know about it. At the same time, under the leadership of Sri Rinchin Dorji, we are trying to bring this trek under a form of a book. So what is your message for these people, those who didn't get an opportunity to meet you? And I really feel myself that I am very much fortunate and privileged to meet such a person who had walked a legend. So what is your message for my young workers?
My message is that I have seen Arunachal grow from a totally unknown place inhabited by simple people who ran their affairs themselves simply. They had their village groups and so on, and they had their own system of sorting out their disputes within themselves. So they had when I went to Arunachal, was a very simple place. People led very simple lives. From there, to reach this level where any Arunachali can stand with any other Indian and say, I am no less than you in my knowledge, in my wisdom, in my education, in my growth, in my attitude, etc. It has been a vast journey for some of us take Arunachal to this level. And I think though a small states, Arunachal and its districts, including Tawang, has a great role to play as future citizens of India.
Thank you very much, sir.
这是在